Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is going to be my review for The Affair, Season 1, Episode 6. And this episode was very interesting. I mean, this really was a game-changing episode for The Affair because this episode changes your opinion about a lot of the characters. It makes you realize a lot more about them. And some of the twists, I honestly was not a huge fan of. There were a few things in this episode that I wasn't a huge fan of. First of all, there was no president in this episode. They basically focused on the flashbacks, which was fine, but I just thought it was a little bit, it's kind of weird now that we have this split story format going still, because the thing is, like, why is this still happening? How is this split story format being told? Like, who is telling it? That's what I want to know. Probably not going to find out for a while, but this episode was still very, very good. I did not think it was as strong as the previous two episodes have been. The previous two episodes have been just amazing, and I've loved them. And this one, while it was a very good episode, and I definitely really enjoyed it, there were some things I definitely want to talk about, and there were some things I kind of didn't like about it. However, we do find out a lot in this episode. We actually find out what's going on between the Lockharts and Oscar. We find out why there's a war between them. We find out why Scottie is coming to visit Oscar, and I definitely like the way that was done this episode, so let's just get to it. So let's go to Noah first, because this episode did go back to seeing Noah's point of view first. And we're back to hearing Noah's side of the story, and right away, we're gonna call bullshit on something that Noah said to Detective Jeffries, because remember that nightclub that Jeffries had asked him about called The End, and he seemed like very uneasy about it? Obviously, he was at that club, because we see in literally the first second, he's at that nightclub. So, obviously, he was in that club, and I don't know why he's hiding it. Definitely something went down at that club, but who knows? So, he meets an old buddy of his, Max, who is a very suspicious character, definitely, and I'm kind of wondering if he had something to do with the murder. I mean, he's a very interesting character. He is a very messed up character. I mean, he does a lot of drugs and things like that. He's just a very bad character. So he's in the back of the Lockharts cabin. They sit at a scenic outdoor table, and they're sitting around and catch up, and they talk about college, and basically we find out that they were roommates in college, basically. And Max wonders how Noah managed to get Helen. And we can tell that Max is totally happy about the separation from his wife. And he's kind of jealous of Noah, yet he is happy about the separation of his wife. And I'll talk about why I think he's actually jealous of Noah in a second. And suddenly Alison appears. And at this point, Noah and Alison, they have to keep their cover. They're pretending not to know each other. They're pretending that they don't know each other because Max could end up blowing his cover to Helen, and that's not going to be in the long run. So basically, Max is immediately all over her. Noah's smiling a little smugly. And we cut to Noah shoving Max. He's very drunk. He goes into a taxi. He runs back to inside where Allison's waiting. They make out and they're dancing to like the I think the song was called September by Earth, Wind and Fire. I really like the song. I thought it was a nice song. I definitely enjoyed it. And they're dancing. They're literally like grinding. Like it's like really sexual dancing. So of course they end up having sex afterward. So it kind of seemed like they're not really hiding the affair as much anymore. Like, they're doing something, like, in such a public place that they don't really care that they're doing it in a public place. So I think that's interesting. So they end up having sex, definitely. And Noah gazes at Alison and says, sometimes I worry, he worries she's just a great dream. And they take a shower together, and Noah raised the issue of what will happen next week when he has to go back to the city, which I thought that was very well done, because basically, we find out here that Noah next, is planning on, and his family, they're planning on going back to the city, basically. And they're planning on kind of starting over, and that's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think that's going to be a very interesting conflict, because this affair is going to end if he goes back to the city. So she replies he shouldn't wake up, and basically she is pretending she does not hear him. She's pretending like, oh, I don't care what you're saying. But Noah has a plan. And the plan is that he's going to find artists in residency somewhere that will allow him to come back to Montauk for a few weeks and finish his novel and spend every night with Alison. Neither are going to mention their spouses, though Alison called herself his mistress. And Noah prefers the word concubine. I have no idea what that means. And I love that. I still love the way the relationship is going. I love the playfulness between them. I definitely really do love that. So Allison surprises Noah when she starts putting clothes on and makes to leave. And this is just really abruptly happened. She just randomly decides to leave. And he right away is getting very suspicious about her. I mean, it makes sense why he's getting so suspicious. Because she's gonna leave, like, right now. So Cole's returning early. And, that's why she's saying that she's gonna leave, and Noah asks if Allison and Cole are sleeping together, which she kind of shuts down. She doesn't tell him an answer. So he then notices she has the foresight to bring a change of clothes. And she suggests he do the same, and he bitterly asks if that's so he can go home and have sex with Helen. And he wants to drive her home, and, basically, but of course, he's drunk and everything. So the sun is coming up, and he watches her bicycle away, and suspicions are rising when she turns into the opposite direction of her home. So definitely Allison is a very shady character right now, and I really like that about what they did about Allison here. This really made us very, made us very more interested in Allison. It made me personally feel Allison's a much more interesting character. Now, the thing with Allison, they have kind of, portrayed her as a girl who is going through a lot of grief, but there's not much else to that than that. That's what she's going through. She's going through a lot of grief, and, she's trying to stay positive. That's what it seemed like is going on with her. However, this episode changes our entire opinion of that, because he then tails her, watch as she picks up that very suspicious cooler. She has that cooler, which we have no idea what's in it, but it's very suspicious. He follows to her drop-off at the taxi dispatch, and it seems like someone is putting two and two together. He creeps back home and crawls into bed, and Helen wakes him some time later because Martin is missing, and he's at the Lockhart ranch, and they don't know why he's missing. So I think it's interesting we haven't seen Martin since episode 2, because we haven't, and I think that's interesting, definitely. But I think the reason why is because, as we know, he's at the ranch. So Noah's swimming some laps, and he then asks Whitney, who is sunbathing, where someone could buy cocaine. And, of course, she's all like, why would I know that? She's, like, telling him that. And I kind of feel like Whitney's doing drugs because she's like him right away. Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. What are you talking about? So he says he needs to know how to score some drugs. And I'm just like, I'm laughing as hard as Whitney's laughing, because who says score some drugs? It really shows just who says that. So she's laughing hysterically about it. She says she can never answer that question. She cannot confirm nor deny that. And basically, he didn't get any answers from her. So Noah's working when Helen tells him that Whitney's therapist wants them to come in too, and she doesn't think it's a bad idea, because she thinks it's a good idea for Whitney, because of course Whitney's getting that therapy because of what she did to that girl last week who almost committed suicide. We know why she did what she did, and basically the therapist wants them to come in. So I think that's a good idea too, and I agree with what Helen is saying there. And Helen points out that Noah has been very distant, and that he seems to have lost interest in having sex with her. And I agree, it seems like he doesn't really want to have sex with her, because, think about it, episode 3, she wanted to take a shower with him. He said no, he didn't want to. So, that was either episode 3 or episode 2. He didn't want to take a shower with her. This last episode, they went through a lot of relationship problems, definitely. And this episode, that kind of comes to a halt. They kind of find their way of fixing that. And she feels very odd and unwanted and asks if she's still a good lay. And she says they should plan on doing it that night. And she says she's going to buy that candle. And Noah doesn't know what to tell her. Because obviously he's not going to tell her, oh, I'm having sex with someone else. Obviously he's not going to tell her that. So he has to keep, he has to be as secret as he can. I think that definitely is very interesting. So he joins his family at the lobster roll, where, Whitney, Trevor, and Stacy are, and also Helen. And we see a very hungover Max. He shows up, and he almost immediately busts Noah's cover, that he was out all night with Max. Which is an explanation Noah's saved from giving. And we can kind of see right away that, Max has a crush on Helen, because he goes right up to her and, starts kissing her. And I was like, okay, that's not weird at all. So I'm kind of feeling like if, they did get a divorce or something in the present, that maybe Helen married Max. I don't know. I feel like they have some sort of chemistry there. Am I the only person? I feel like they do. So Helen then sees Allison at another table. Max spots Allison at another table, goes over to hit on her again, and Helen tells him he can do better than that. And Noah's all, she's married and everything, and basically leads to a hilarious story from Whitney about what Grandma did, what basically, Margaret did with now I can't remember his name, but the really evil the really stupid, the really bad father. I can't remember his name now. When he was in Vietnam, and Helen shuts her up before we can get to the end of it. And Noah takes Stacy. She has to go to the bathroom, and there's a knock on the door, and he sees Allison. And right away, he just makes out with her. He starts madly making out with her and everything. He leaves, and basically basically he's waiting for her there. He takes his little girl's hand to go back to the table, and back at the table, Max has lost it. He is completely, hungover and everything. He's basically talking to them about how their parents are aliens and how there's a green sky somewhere. This guy is a complete, it's fucked up what he's saying, clearly. It is extremely fucked up what he's saying. He's a completely fucked up character, and I like that about his character, definitely. He's very funny to watch, and I actually do want to see more of his character. He's very funny, definitely, and I like that. He adds a lot of comedic humor to the show that we don't really get a lot in Noah's. Well, we do get it from, Margaret and things like that, but it's good to see someone deliver humor that's not, Margaret, and I like that. So he's crying about being separated from his wife and boys, and it's just, it's really weird what's going on there. So Noah pays Oscar, and he's really pissed off from the other night, and he apologized for the other day, because of course, the other nights, Noah basically yelled at him and everything, and he tries to make peace with him, and kill time he can get with Allison. After Helen decides to peace off with Max and go mini-golfing, they end up bonding. So Allison leaves the restaurant, and Oscar agrees with Noah's silent gaze that Allison's cute, and then informs Noah that he took Allison's virginity, and Scottie then comes in. Now, of course, every time Scottie comes into this, every time Scottie comes in, he goes to Oscar, and we don't really know what he's doing. So, this was very interesting what he's doing here, and this definitely makes Noah very interested, and makes Noah try to figure out what's going on, because obviously he has no idea what's going on. He wants to know what exactly is going on here. So he confronts Oscar about money he owed him, and Oscar's still talking about the bowling permit, and Scottie goes to the cash register, takes some cash out, shoves Oscar aside. Oscar's like, Scottie, what are you doing? And he punches him in the parking lot, and Oscar loses it and comes back and picks up the phone, and he says, I'd like to report some suspicious activity, and there's my mom in the background. Sorry about that, guys. That was my mom in the background. And basically, Oscar explains to Noah that the Lockharts are drug dealers. And all he says, and I really like what he says to him, he says, they're dirty as dirt, that's dirty. That's basically what he says. So, I thought that was definitely very interesting, what he said there. I mean, and it definitely makes us very interested in seeing what's really going on with the Lockharts, because as we know, as I said, there's been a feud with them, so we don't know what it's about, and you can kind of tell what's going on, and he confirms that, yes, they are drug dealers, which I kind of suspected. It is a little bit predictable, but I like the twist that they are drug dealers, definitely. I think that definitely is very interesting what's going on there. So Noah goes to the ranch, and he immediately tells Allison he needs to talk to her. So he's like, I need to talk to you, and she's like, oh, sure, you can talk to me. And he asks her, have you been dealing drugs? And at first, she doesn't want to tell him, but then he explains he followed her that morning, and she denies it all till he tells her that Oscar called the police, and then things really get, this gets really intense, because her entire demeanor changes. Noah's explaining to call, her face, is getting harder and cooler. It's hard for her to hold back what's really going on, and he watches her run to Cole, explain the situation. Oscar narked them out, and Noah's grossed out by everything. He is obviously very upset by what's going on, and he's so disgusted that he goes home to Helen. I thought this was interesting. He goes home to Helen, immediately starts, basically taking off her clothes, making out with her. She's like, what are you doing? The kids are home, and he's like, I don't care. So she's obviously happy about it, because this is what she's wanted all these episodes, was for them to have some sexual time together. And they end up having sex against the mirror, and that's how Noah's part ends. So I thought this was really interesting, and what I like is Allison's part, it directly continues what's going on with the drug thing, because now we know that it's going to focus on that, which I definitely really enjoyed. So let's get to Allison's stuff, and I thought Noah's stuff was very good in this episode, but Allison's stuff was definitely more interesting, and I want to talk about it. So it appears we're repeating the same period of time, because we're back to Noah and Allison's hotel room, where she gazed at him sleeping. In her memory, though, she showers alone, and there's no talk of the couple being together. In fact, in her version, Noah's going to the bathroom while she's in the shower, and Noah wonders why she has to be somewhere before 5 a.m. And she says to the docks, where she, basically, she expects to see Will there, but Will's not there. It's another guy who's not Will, so... At the taxi dispatch, she asks Caleb about the blonde passed out on the couch, and Allison's all, she's all jumpy as they head into the secret Backs drug room, and there we see our evidence. This confirms that, yes, they are drug dealers, because at first we're like, okay, is Scottie lying? Is he kind of exaggerating? But no, now this confirms that they are drug dealers, because we see right under the fish, there's the bag of drugs, which I predicted was going on. I predicted that Will had something to do with it. And she mentions that Will wasn't at the docks and that, there was someone new. And they all agree that's very weird. So what I kind of think is going on here is that Will is, maybe people are getting a little bit more suspicious of this family. And maybe Oscar hired this guy to further investigate them. I don't know, but that definitely is very interesting. We all know this leads up to Scottie's death. So this is definitely going to be cool to see what's going on here. So at the ranch, we see Cole, and he's walking a beautiful horse named Elizabeth Taylor. And she reminds Cole of Alison. So that's why he names her. And, he basically says that she's majestic and she's stubborn. And Alison walks down a few stalls. And there's Martin, who we haven't seen in quite a while. I mean, the last time we saw Martin, I believe, was episode 3 or episode 2. Sorry, the phone's ringing. Ignore that. And he's asleep in the hay, and he just wanted to help with the new horse, and that's why they couldn't find Martin, because he just wanted help with the new horse, and he begs them not to tell his parents. And Cole is basically, he at first looks like he's about to, really yell at him, and he's like, just come up with us for breakfast. I love the way Cole is. He's such a funny character. He's such a nice character. I love how rational he is, too. And the thing about Cole is that he really is a great character. He's a very sweet character, a very nice character, and I really do like that about Cole. So at the house, Martin is very shy, basically they're all chatting and everything, and Cole's mom is wondering if his parents are worried, but Martin says they don't really care, and he then goes on to do the kid thing of complaining about his dad being lame, especially with how a teacher matches up to all this ranch machismo, and I think that's really funny. So Cherry tells him that she used to be a teacher, and Cole is saying it's just dad stuff, and Alison smiles and takes in, is basically taking in how awesome Cole really is. And later the phone rings, and it's Helen, and she's wondering where her son is. Alison nervously tells her that it was just breakfast and covers for Martin. And it was actually Noah who called in the previous Rattel, and she gets off the phone, is extra judgy about Helen's tone and lack of concern. And I kind of feel like Alison is scared of Helen. I definitely feel like she is. I mean, we've seen Alison's point of view. To her, Helen is a very intimidating woman, and I definitely really enjoy that. With seeing that with Helen's character. I think that definitely is very interesting what's going on there. And I think it's really cool that Alison is portraying her this way. Just the way that's being handled is interesting. So, basically, Cherry tells Helen just cool it and everything. The woman has 4 kids, and Alison blames it on her wealth. And Alison goes outside and watches how sweet Cole is to Martin. He teaches him how to ride, and she's no doubt thinking about what a good father he'd be to their son. Or maybe she's thinking about the unfairness of life of the woman who's rich and has to give, gets to have a son growing up in the world when she does not. So, Alison leaves her shift at the lobster roll and finds a note from Noah in her bicycle basket to meet with him at Phoebe's house. And I'm assuming this was after the scene where he had sex with Helen. I'm assuming that's what happened here, because they're not telling things to a police officer, so I'm pretty sure this is like a non-linear story now, and that's what's going on here. So he managed to show someone, to somehow break in, is waiting for her with a somber expression. He tells her that he followed her from the hotel and has suspicions about the cooler. And she goes for her cigarettes while Noah angrily asks what she thinks she's doing. He yells at her for a bit, asks how stupid it is to deal coke and how she could go to jail. And she basically gets to, I don't care what happens to me, I don't care if I live or die or go to jail. And she breaks down a bit. Noah registers that he never really knew how screwed up she really was, and she says they don't have a choice because the ranch can't sustain itself, and Noah can't believe it, but he can't help himself from kissing her. I'm wondering why she never told him, and she didn't think it mattered. So Noah points out his son is at the ranch every day, and she explains the rules of the coke dealing game that Noah understandably scoffs at. So Noah's had it, he makes to leave, but first there's something he needs to tell Alison, so we don't really see what that is. So we cut to her racing to the ranch to warn Cole, which gets to a pretty interesting cleanup of drugs. You know, they're obviously, they know that the police are coming after them, so they're cleaning up the drugs. It's very intense at this point. And in order to cover up, basically, the info, she tells the boys it was she who heard Oscar who make the phone call to the cops. And Scottie can't believe it. And, you know, Caleb and Scottie, they're telling Cole, let's just dump this in the ocean. But Cole is saying they should dig a hole on the property. And I think it's a good plan because it's a better way to hide the drugs. If you just dumped it into the ocean, it'd be gone. So Alison offers to come with him, but he says if he's going down alone in a blaze of glory, he's going alone. And Alison is left to talk to the cops when they show. But it's actually not the cops who knock on the door. Of course, it's Oscar. So, of course it's Oscar. He's just there. Hello, I'm just here to buy drugs. That's literally what Oscar's like. He's like, I'm just here to buy drugs. I'm gonna, not be that long. So, Caleb ends up calling him a narc and tells him to get out. And Oscar claims innocence as Caleb tries to murder him because he says Alison hurt him, hurt him himself. And it's a very intense scene here. I love the way this scene was done. It was so intense, and I love that. But Oscar knows better. Then he says sometimes he just likes to practice calling the cops, and this doesn't go over very well, because Alison sends Caleb out to go tell Cole it was a false alarm, and also to get these two out of the same room, and once they're alone, Oscar lays into her, and he says, all this time I thought you were in mourning, and basically, he says if you want to have sex with someone, you could have had sex, he tells her that if she wanted to have sex with someone, you could have had sex with her. And she beats him around the face almost as effectively as Scottie, and she's a shaky wreck. Obviously, she's very affected by this. And it's really showing that I think Oscar's definitely going to be the one to kill Scottie. However, I do feel it's going to be a little bit predictable because we do see a promo for next week where Jeffries goes over and says, I'm looking for Mr. Soloway. So maybe I still kind of have the suspicion that maybe Noah did it. I don't know. So back at the range, the boys are arguing over what to do. They have no idea what to do here. And Cole thinks they're back in business as long as they give Oscar his permit. And Hal walks down. Cole shoots Alison a look. And he thought she went home. And she tells him all this stuff needs to stop. And he tells her to relax. And Oscar's just a weirdo. Who is really he really is just a fucked up perv. I've said this before. Oscar's a creep. That's his character. And that's how he's always going to be. So Cole points out that there are $100,000 in the hole, and they have to sell the drugs to get out of it. Remember, these people are not rich, so they obviously are in a very hard predicament here, and she suggests selling the ranch because they're miserable, and he thinks the family is depending on them, and she points out that selling the ranch means freedom and new lives, and they could just finally move on. And I agree what she's saying. I mean, all these years, this has been going on. This whole drug thing, it's been going on. Why not just move on from it? And he's all like, there's no moving on. So it seems like things get really intense, but then Hal comes back with Martin. And Martin seems very upset about something. He obviously does not know what to do. He obviously doesn't know what he's thinking. And basically we see that Cole leaves to go chase the horse down because Cole tells him that he lost the horse, and I'm like, oh no, this is not gonna end well. But it ends up going well because, Cole's a nice guy and everything. So Alison offers to drive him home. We get a very interesting conversation between Alison and Martin. I think this is actually the first time they've had interaction. I thought this was well done, definitely. They work well together. Because basically, they're talking about why they do the things they do and have no idea why they do them. And he thanks her politely, and then Noah comes to the door. And this was the scene that I was kind of like, I don't know if I like where this is going. Because Alison says she thought about what he said before, and she doesn't want that life anymore and wants to start over with Noah. And Noah's saying he's been thinking about it, and he thinks they should just end things. And he turns and heads back inside, and the affair's over. So, the affair's over between them, and I don't know if I'm happy about that at all. I think, honestly, if they want to do that, why not make that, like, the cliffhanger? I think that would have been fine, but we're only on episode 6. We have 4 more episodes left, and if there's not going to be an affair, then this show should not be called The Affair, because The Affair only lasted for 3 episodes. So I'm not exactly going to be happy if that's what's going on here. I don't know if the affair is over. I'm not going to say if it officially is over, but I can't believe that the affair is over. I don't think that's true. I think the affair is going to continue somehow. I don't think there's a way for it to just be completely over. But overall, guys, this episode was amazing. A few things I definitely want to talk about. First of all, with Oscar, do you think that Oscar, killed Scottie? Do you think he was involved with it? I don't know. Does Max partly have a reason with it? I think Max might have maybe killed him. I don't know. Max was at that club. Remember, Jeffries was asking Noah, why were you at that club? So maybe Max was the one who did, because he goes to that club frequently. So that's very interesting what's going on there. I'm wondering, what's going to happen. Do you think Noah breaking off the affair with Allison's a good thing? I understand why he did it, but I just feel it's too early into the season, in my opinion. I just feel it's a little too early. It's really my only complaint with this episode. I really have no other complaints. I really love the way we find out all this drug stuff. I think that's really cool. And I understand why the drug thing is going on. It seems like it'd be something you're not happy with, but you do understand why they're doing this. They're doing this because they need the money. That's why they're doing this, basically. And plus, they've been doing this pretty much all their life, and they really can't get out of it, so I think that's interesting, definitely, what's going on there. It looks like next week what's going to end up happening is that Noah's going to end up meeting up with Cole, and that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. What's going to happen with Helen and Noah? I was surprised that they have that relationship back. I thought that was interesting, the way they just, reconciled like that. I thought that was definitely something that I wasn't expecting, and I thought that was, very interesting what's going on there. Do you think, Alison is scared of Helen? I think she kind of thinks of her as just a very demanding person. Do you think she's jealous of her as well? Definitely, I think she is jealous of the Soloways. I think definitely you can tell in this episode that she is jealous of them. That's it, my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I overall thought this was probably the third best episode of the season. I really liked the other two episodes more, but this episode was still very well done. And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of The Originals, which I cannot wait for, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.